Hey guys, thanks for watching Mad for Swoop. Today we're going over 3 leaders that may make a comeback going into set 4 of Star Wars Unlimited. If you're like me, your competitive season has kind of come to an end for set 3. I have a local PQ that I'm judging instead of playing in, and so for the time being I'm looking at new decks going into set 4 and maybe some leaders that have been out of the meta or never were in the meta that could become relevant. So let's go over number 1. Number 1 is the Mandalorian from Shadows of the Galaxy. So this is a leader that exhausts your opponent's unit when you play an upgrade. Obviously, in the past, upgrades have been perhaps a little bit easy to remove. Think about Darksaber being extremely risky. Well, now we have pilots who are upgrades. And so we can see a world where the Mandalorian is a little bit more space-oriented. You're playing cheaper pilots, and by doing so, you're exhausting your opponent. Kind of like a heroic sort of Django thing going on. With the Mandalorian on his unflipped side, you need 4 or less remaining HP on the unit you're exhausting. So I see sequencing, as it always is in this game, but sequencing being extra important with the Mandalorian, because if they've got a unit that's active, you're wanting to exhaust it, but if you wait for them to play a pilot on it, and it pushes that health above 4, well, now you can't exhaust it with his power. You need to use other cards to do that, which we don't necessarily want to do. So the sequencing will be interesting with the Mandalorian. And then, of course, he flips at 6, his flip side, it's a 6 or less remaining HP unit that you can exhaust. And it's not an exhaust action, right? So you can do that multiple times. I'm not sure how relevant that'll be, but to be exhausting someone every single time you play a pilot, and at the very least once a turn, is very interesting. Obviously, with any deck with pilots, the balance between how many ships we have versus pilots is going to be interesting, because if you don't have a ship out on the board, this all goes to nothing. So there's some interesting stuff too. Like, we have in Cunning, we have the Anakin, I'll try spinning new pilot card, where especially with the Mandalorian, like, think of it this way: you play Anakin as an upgrade to one of your ships, you exhaust their unit, you attack with the ship because upgrades can go on an active body or a ready body. You survive the attack, you bounce Anakin back to your hand, and you keep that engine running for the Mandalorian, where you have an upgrade to play every turn because it's Anakin. So that is exciting to me. I'm going to be kind of comparing the Mandalorian with Quinlan, who's, a little bit in the meta right now. I guess he's moved kind of onto the fringe. But I want to give him an honorable mention going to set 4, because I think he could be extremely relevant as well. Another interesting thing about the Mandalorian is we've always thought Darksaber with him, but imagine a deck where you're using Darksaber almost as like a sneaky backup option, where picture us playing Disabling Fangfighter, Mandalorian ship, deleting one of their upgrades with that, then you add, say, an Anakin to the Disabling Fangfighter, attack with it, bounce Anakin back to your hand, etc., or something along the lines of a ship with a pilot that they're going to then target, and then you put a Darksaber on your flipped Mandalorian leader, who's now giving EXP to all those units we just talked about. Disabling Fangfighter himself. You can have a Sabine Wren unit out there, the 2 costs, which they're not thinking about, and all of a sudden a Darksaber comes into play on your leader or Sabine. It's pumping up your Fangfighter who has a pilot on it. Suddenly you're not relying on one upgrade to be removed and have your whole game bricked. You can be flinging around multiple upgrades in different arenas at the same time based on what your opponent is countering, all the while exhausting their units. I think it could become a pretty important heroism deck. And I think exhaust is going to be as important as ever. Obviously, cunning and aggression has been pretty popular this set in terms of results at tournaments. But in a world where we're seeing more cards being added, for example, the Chewbacca pilot, where it's sort of similar to a Lurking Tie, where it can't be defeated by takedowns and things like that. All of a sudden, Exhaust becomes a pretty good option when you're throwing in Frozen in Carbonite, No Good to Me Dead. Your leader can exhaust. Suddenly, we're getting around those cards that everyone is pretty excited about building up, or even in a new Thrawn situation with the Thrawn leader that everyone's excited about right now, where when defeated, it's triggered twice. Well, how about we just don't defeat them? How about we just exhaust them? And good luck collecting your triggers unless you're going to defeat your own units. And even that deck, I'm going off on tangent, but even that deck, I'm not confident that it just doesn't get plowed over by Sabine and Django. So let's go into number 2 of leaders that I think could make a comeback. And this is a leader that I think all of us in set 1 were given trouble by her at some point, and then we kind of realized how to play against it. But the inclusion of a lot of Rebel pilots into this set 4 kind of changes what we can do with her, and that's Leia. So it's a nice early deploy with Leia. We know what she does. She attacks with 2 rebels at once, basically one after the other. And so you're claiming initiative quicker, which I think going into a pilot sort of set, keep in mind playing a pilot is a turn, and then you have to send another turn to attack with that unit. And you'll probably want to do something else on your turn. Whereas Leia, you're getting 2 things done at once, and you're potentially attacking with a piloted unit now, instead of a couple weaklings, or a piloted 2 units that is doing so much damage really quickly, which is a little bit exciting to me, especially with all the Rebel synergy we're seeing. The new Wedge leader looks really good in green, obviously, but it's pretty obvious what he's doing, right? It's all space oriented. You know, as soon as you see Wedge, you know what his plan is for his deck. And I think historically with those type of leaders, they haven't done particularly well because they're too easy to shut down. Think of like a Gar Saxon or someone where you know exactly what they're going to do with their deck. They never really took off as we thought they might. So I see Leia having a little bit of a, maybe not an advantage, maybe an advantage, but a different sort of toolkit than Wedge, because she can go ground too. She can fully rely on Rebel synergies. She can attack with a ground and a space, someone with a pilot in it. You can pick your spots, so it's not going to be as easy to delete Leia's units. Is she faster than Sabine? Most decks aren't. But there's Sentinels there for her too now against those aggro. Like you could go double green with her. There's more options, I think, over Wedge, and I think typically those mid-rangey, more option decks do better. Even though Wedge looks really fun to play right now. She avoids that upgrade hate. She has options to avoid deletion of units as well. Like think of Blue Leader that they've just shown, where you can deploy it in ground if you want. Where suddenly, like with Wedge, they tried to shut down your space. Now you go ground with Leia, you're attacking with 2 units at once. It's going to be interesting to me to try Leia into set 4, and that's why she's my number 2 leader to just consider trying with set 4 and even going into set 4, and don't forget about her, because Rebel's going to be big. The third leader I quickly wanted to point out is a leader that is right in the meta right now, and is going to, if anything, is going to improve going into set 4, which is wild to think about, and that's Han Yellow, Han 1 from set 1. The addition of pilots for Han adds another interesting strategy for him, where especially bounce pilots, because obviously one of the weaknesses of Han Yellow is you're burning a card to add a resource. We talk about hand size, things like that. Well, what about an Anakin pilot who you can bounce back to your hand off the ship if it survives, and then you keep that hand size, right? So think about like a turn 1 Millennium Falcon from set 1, 3/4, that Han keeps in play from deleting the resource. You add Anakin, you hit for 5 and probably survive because you have a 7 booty on the ship now in the second turn of the game. You could also just use your other 2 resources you have, because you've used Han's ability, to surprise strike or something like that, hit for 8 on the second turn of the game, bounce Anakin and potentially the Falcon if you need to, back to your hand, to keep the combo rolling moving forward, because the Falcon comes out active. Keeping your hand size, you're not running out of cards. Something like that is a different sort of strategy than we've seen Han use so far, but it's an interesting another option for him that I think could be interesting moving forward. So those are 3 decks I think that could make an appearance come set 4. Obviously we'll have a bunch of new set 4 leaders, and the set is only like 20% revealed right now, but we kind of get the gist of what it's going to be. And so I think we can safely start practicing with a few different ideas moving forward. I hope that helped. Please like and subscribe and comment below what you think. And thanks for watching Mad for Sue. You guys take care.